Do your cutting materials move on your mat while you are trying to cut them? If they do, here are some hints and tips to help. In this short video, I'm going to share some hints and tips regarding securing different types of cutting materials to your ScanNCut mat. So up at the top, in that top row, I have the craft foam. Then in the middle row, I have some felt decorations. Then along the bottom row, I've cut some leather as well as printable magnetic sheets. So let's go and take a look at some of the hints and tips for securing these materials to your ScanNCut mat. I have made two previous videos regarding cleaning the ScanNCut mat and maintaining it, and then another one on how to actually re-sticky your mat. So I'll put the links to those videos in the description box below this video. But for today, we're going to have a look at the challenge we sometimes have when our mat is just not sticky enough and we need to cut something in a hurry. So I'm going to show you what you can do. Now, in the previous video that I mentioned, I actually demonstrated how to actually make your mat really sticky again by applying a spray adhesive. Now, often we don't have time to go and clean our mat and then re-sticky it with the spray adhesive, so I'm going to show you an alternative that you can use. Now, just before I show you the alternative solution, I just want to mention that this spray adhesive is the one that gets applied to the mat, because the alternative that I'm going to show you now is going to be applied to the different cutting materials and not the mat. So our solution for when we have got time to clean our mat and re-sticky it is to use this spray adhesive. But if we don't have the time to do that, I'm going to show you the alternative, which is to apply an adhesive to the cutting material. Now, this is the adhesive that I like to use on my cutting material if I don't have time to re-sticky my mat. So this is what is known as a temporary spray adhesive, and it's made by Madeira, and it's called MSA 1100. Now, I like to use this one because this is the one that I also use for attaching my tearaways and cutaways to my fabric for my embroidery machine. Now, there are different types of temporary spray adhesives that are also for embroidery machines, and I would recommend that you look for one of those if you cannot get a hold of this particular one. Now, the reason that I like to use the one for the embroidery machines is that it is safe to use on embroidery machines and also for use with the cutting machine. So now let me show you how I apply this to my various different types of cutting materials. But just before we get into this video, welcome to the Sew and Craft channel. My name is Shireen Haynes. Being creative and teaching are my passions, and I've been doing this full-time since 1993. I post easy to follow step-by-step videos for sewing and craft, and if you'd like to know when I post new videos, please click on the subscribe button, the little bell icon to be notified, as well as the like button, because this helps me to spread the word that sewing and crafting are fun. Thank you. Also, please click on the link below this video to connect to my website for even more video lessons. Now, I always only ever teach from my personal experience, so what I'm going to demonstrate in this video is based only on my personal experience and what I have found to work well for me. The MSA 1100, or whichever temporary spray you choose to use, can be used on regular printer paper, as well as the different weights of cardstock, and that also includes your large scrapbooking sheets. So now let me show you how you can apply this glue or this temporary spray adhesive to your different cutting materials. Now when you are working with any spray adhesive, please make sure that you stay right away from your cutting machine. Now I'm not going to actually be spraying in here right now, but I want to just show you how I do this. But please remember, keep your machines away from where you are spraying. Now I like to spray inside a little box that's got a lid, so that once I've sprayed I just close the lid so that the glue can settle on top of my cutting material. Now the other thing that is important is that you also need to spray in a well ventilated area. So that is really important, because you don't want to breathe in any glue fumes. Now what I've done is I have a little box that is big enough for me to put all my A4 sheets in, and then what I do is I just line the bottom of the box with my printer paper that just stays in there permanently, and then I will pop my piece of cutting material that I want to spray with the adhesive inside the box. And then what you're going to do is you're going to take the spray adhesive. Now I'm not actually going to spray because I am inside at the moment and I'm not in a well ventilated area, and I have my machine there. Now once you've got your piece of material inside your box, then you're going to give the can a really good shake. Now as I mentioned, I'm not going to actually spray right now because I'm very close to my machine and I'm not in a well ventilated area. So just make sure you go to the well ventilated area and that you're away from the machine, and then you can start spraying. Now you hold the can about 15 to 20 centimeters away from what you want to spray the adhesive onto, and then you're going to just spray very quickly, very lightly and very evenly over the material that you want to cut. Now I have already sprayed this, so I'm going to show you how it now sticks onto my cutting mat. Then if you are using the much larger pieces, what I've done is I've just found a box that is a little bit larger that the scrapbooking size pieces fit into, and then once again I've lined that with the computer paper, so I pop it into the box and I quickly spray it, and once I've sprayed I just close the lid for a couple of seconds, and then the glue settles inside the box, and then you can open the lid and then just simply lift out the material and pop it onto your cutting mat. Now just another little tip, I just label my boxes with my Brother labeling machine so that I know I mustn't use these boxes for anything else besides applying glue to my cutting materials. So here I have my piece of card that I sprayed very lightly while it was inside the box, and now you'll be able to see it's actually tacky. Now this glue, because it's a temporary adhesive, will disappear within 24 hours, so you won't even know that it was on the card. So if you are concerned about whatever it is that you're cutting remaining sticky, it won't, because this spray will just disappear within 24 hours. So now I'm ready to mount my sticky cutting material onto my mat. So I just flip it over so that the glue side of the cutting material is against the sticky side of the mat, and then I'm just going to smooth that down. Now once it's on there, it will not move while you are busy cutting, and you'll see that it's actually solidly stuck down, and that if I want to lift it, I actually have to lift it with my spatula, and you can see it is solidly stuck down onto my mat and it will not move. So this is just a temporary solution. If you want to put some temporary adhesive onto the back of your cutting material, then you would use the MSA 1100 so that you can continue cutting until you've got time to come back and clean your mat and then put this glue onto the actual mat. So just to recap, this glue goes onto the mat, this glue goes onto your cutting material. Now we know that we can use the temporary glue or spray adhesive on the back of our cutting materials. So the MSA 1100 is perfect for your printer paper, the different weights of cardstock. But what happens if you want to cut those heavier cutting materials? Let's go and have a look at how we would handle those. Now, if we take a look at the much thicker type of card, the temporary adhesive will work, but once you start getting to the much thicker or heavier weights of card, then the card might still want to move while you are busy cutting it, especially if your mat has started to lose some of its tackiness. So what I do in a situation like that is I use the masking tape, but it's the one that is more tacky than your regular masking. So this is often what they refer to as painter's tape, and I'm going to show you how I use that now. So what I do is I just break off a couple of strips of the painter's or masking tape, and then I stick it down along all four edges of the board. And then if you've got the temporary adhesive sprayed on behind here, if your mat isn't tacky enough, you can still go and attach these little strips of masking or painter's tape, and then this board will not move while you are busy cutting it. The great thing about using this tape is that it is reusable. So what I generally always do is I just use my little spatula, and then I lift this tape off and then just gently peel it off. And then what I like to do is I'll take this piece of tape and I'll stick it onto a piece of plastic sheeting, and then I've got my pre-cut strips the next time I want to use them, and then I just reuse them. Now obviously you can only reuse them a certain number of times, but they certainly are reusable for several times. So here is that sheet of plastic that I was referring to. It's actually one of those filing wallets, and all that I do is I take my pieces of painter's tape or masking tape and I stick them onto here, and then when I need pieces again I just simply lift them up and use them. So as I mentioned, they are reusable for several times, but obviously after a while you will have to toss some of them and replace them with new strips. Now, as my cutting materials increase in thickness, like for example with this craft foam, it's obviously a lot thicker than the paper or the card would be. So I then rather just use a couple more strips of the masking or the painter's tape. So you'll see that with this craft foam I've actually applied 3 strips to either side, and then 1 to the top and 1 to the bottom, and that holds it on there nice and securely. But once again, if you find that your mat has lost a lot of its tackiness, then you can also apply the spray adhesive to the back of the craft foam as well. Now when it comes to cutting felt, I always like to pre-treat my felt, and there is a separate video on how to cut felt. But as far as the felt goes, once I have pre-treated it, I then just pop it onto my mat, and once again you can spray the back of the felt if your mat has lost a lot of its stickiness. But even if the mat is sticky, I still like to put the painter's tape on either side and then a piece at the top and the bottom, just to make sure that the felt does not move while it's busy cutting, because if it moves you won't get beautiful cut results like I have here. And this was just a little sample that I did of a coaster that I was going to make, and you can see my felt has been pre-treated, and I've cut that so that I can create a pretty coaster. So the felt, just to recap, I have pre-treated so that I get perfect cutting results, and then once it's pre-treated I stick it onto my cutting mat. If the cutting mat has lost a lot of its stickiness, then I do put a bit of spray adhesive behind this, but if the mat is sufficiently sticky, then all I do is I put the strips of tape on. But I put the strips of tape on regardless, so whether the mat is sticky and it's got spray adhesive on the back, or if the mat is sticky and there's no spray adhesive on the back, I still use the painter's tape. When it comes to cutting the faux leather, I like to put more strips of the painter's tape down the sides to make sure that it stays nice and secure. Now, if the mat is sufficiently sticky, then you don't have to apply the MSA 1100 to the back of the faux leather. However, if the mat has lost a lot of its stickiness, then I prefer to put the MSA 1100 behind the faux leather and still use the strips. So irrespective of whether the mat is sticky or not sticky enough, I still use the strips of tape. Now, when it comes to cutting genuine leather, there are some different rules, but for the faux leather, this works perfectly. When it comes to the magnetic sheets, you can purchase these magnetic sheets that you can put through a regular inkjet printer. So what I've done is I just printed out some little sayings, and now I'm going to cut them out. But with the magnetic sheets, they are also a little bit thicker than usual, so I always use painter's tape, and you'll see I put 3 strips down either side, 1 strip at the top and the bottom, like with all the other thicker cutting materials. Now also, once again, if you decide that your mat is just not sticky enough, you can apply the spray adhesive to the back of this, and you can, because after 24 hours it's going to completely disappear and you won't even know that it was there. So depending on the stickiness of your mat, you can use the MSA 1100 plus the tape or just the tape. Now, one extra quick tip, please make sure that when you are using the painter's tape, when you are placing it along the edges, please make sure that the tape is away from where the machine is going to be cutting or scanning. So you'll see I place mine on the very edges of the cutting material. So this applies to all cutting material where you are going to be using the tape. Here are some more samples of the printable magnetic sheets and how I used them. So you can see you can print various quotes or inspirational messages as well as photographs. Now, if you would like more hints and tips like this, remember to subscribe and click on the little bell icon below this video, and please click on the like button too, because this just helps me to spread the word that sewing and crafting are fun. Thank you.